Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another overview video. I think we might start changing up the date. Not sure if I'm going to still release these on Monday. Today, I am actually bringing back an old gun that pretty sure I did some videos on it before, but this is my Roland Special from way back in the day. I feel like this gun has pretty much fallen off to the wayside, but there's a lot of variants out there in terms of other people making like their own versions of a Roland Special. So I'm going to go over it again just because I think this is a relatively unique gun and it's still kind of one of my favorites in the lineup. I don't shoot it quite as often nowadays, and I'll get into the reason why. Basically, this is a great gun. I think it's a great shooter and I still like it a lot. I think maybe some people might want to see it again, I guess. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to start off at the front here because the comp is probably the most unique or interesting thing about the Roland Special. This is a KKM Comp and barrel, and I actually have the nitrided version. So it's got a nitrided finish on the barrel, and it has, I forgot exactly what the thread pattern is, but it doesn't use a standard 1/2x28 or 13x1 right-hand thread, but they use their own thread pattern for this comp. I'm not 100% sure why they do that. They do offer it in other standard thread patterns, but unfortunately not suppressor capable. I do have a different threaded barrel that sometimes I'll throw in here if I want to put a can on it, but this one came to me in that configuration, so it's just this comp that will fit right onto the barrel. They use 2 Allen screws to attach the comp, and it's essentially timed to the slide. So if you notice the fit on this one, I have also noticed on other people's KKM Comp and barrel systems that theirs may have some variance in terms of having a little gap here. For some people, that might drive you crazy, but I happen to get lucky, and it just so happens that it's timed to where it's basically flush with where the slide is. I like that. It looks good. And the comp actually works really well. You do need to shoot heavier grain weight and maybe hotter ammunition to actually see the benefit of shooting with a comp. But realistically, that's actually not even the reason why the Roland has the comp. You'll see right here on the X300 underneath the comp, I have a standard X300. I believe this one was when they were still doing, I think, 500 or 600 lumens. So not like the current turbo series or anything. But this one, it's tan. It matches the tan frame that I chose to use for this Roland build, so that's why I like that on here. Now, I chose the A model because this one's quick detach. Sometimes I think it's nice to just be able to pull the light off, and I currently haven't had any issues with the light just coming off while shooting and the recoil happening. It hasn't been an issue for me, so I'm not sure if that's something that you might have to deal with, but the A model, which is quick disconnect, I do like that for the ability to take the light on and off relatively quickly. So it slips right on, clicks in place. And really the comp originally, at least I think this is how it went down. I'm not 100% sure, so don't fact check me on this. But basically, when the guy was creating this build, he essentially used the comp to keep the light from getting a bunch of carbon residue built up on the lens. So if you shoot pistols a lot with lights on them, you'll notice that as you continue to shoot more and more, carbon will build up on the lens of the light, and then less light will get through. So a lot of people have different remedies for essentially keeping the lead debris buildup on the lens off. So for example, some people will put maybe a little bit of CLP or some cleaning solution or something to make it easier to clean the lens off. Well, if you have a gun that's flush with the bezel of the light, which X300s are kind of long, then it actually helps a lot with keeping less debris and less lead buildup on the front of the lens. So that's essentially why he ran a comp and barrel on his gun. I'm not really sure that that's something that you should rely on 100% because ultimately you will have to keep the lens clean. And it does get dirty no matter what kind of setup you're running. But I will say that I have noticed versus running a standard 19 length gun with an X300 on it, with and without a comp, there is a big difference on how quickly the lens gets covered. So maybe there's some truth to that. Moving to the rear, the sights I'm using are Magwell sights. They are just plain black suppressor height sights. I don't like having a tritium front and rear with red dot pistols. So typically the guns that I'm using that have red dots on them, I would either prefer them not to have irons at all, which, you know, you trust your optic a little bit more than you think, or, you know, you're just point shooting at that point. Or if you do choose to have backup irons on there, I like to keep them flat and black, no tritium, no paint, no high vis stuff, because if they're backup sights, so I'm primarily looking for the dot and I'm not necessarily relying on the irons all the time. So I'd like a little bit less distraction. So that's something to think about if you're gonna put iron sights as a backup to a dot on a pistol. I would say that having just flat irons, and they're a little bit cheaper than buying tritium sights, it's nice because you don't have a bunch of dots, you know, drawing your attention away from you. Especially if you're using quality dots like RMRs. The Acro P2 seem to be really nice right now. There's a bunch of good quality dots out there. Even the Hollow Suns seem to be performing very well, as long as you trust, you know, them not to turn your optic off the moment a certain country might invade. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really gonna get into that, but basically, if you have a quality dot on your gun, you probably don't need to worry too much about the backup irons. The slide work I had done by ATEI Guns. So they actually did a fantastic job on this. Originally, this started as a Gen 3 Glock 19. And because of this, it had the Tenifer finish on there. Boy, that sweet Tenifer on the Glocks, so good. Not like that mistake gas nitride and all the experimental BS that they tried, but basically ATEI's QPQ nitrate salt bath finish, I think is what it's called. It's super nice, and it's very, very close in texture, feel, and finish to basically Glock factory Tenifer. So it looks amazing. And I had them do essentially the full works. So you can see the top wave serrations here. You can see that these are enhanced serrations for the front and the rear on both sides. And basically they're widened and they're much deeper. This can become an issue, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but I will say for grippiness, it works really well. So gripping the slide, you can definitely feel that basically it's a little bit more tactile, easier to grip the slide, to work it. And I do really like these top serrations because they give you just a little bit more grip when you're doing press checks and just pulling the slide from the front. I think it's really nice and it's a good aesthetic look. I also had them cut around the model number so I could keep Glock 19 Austria on there. Some of their options allow you to just cut straight through if you prefer to just have full contact serrations. I don't think it makes enough of a difference for me to get rid of the model number and all that stuff. So I think aesthetically it looks good and it still functions just fine. I have a Trijicon RMR, and this one is actually a Type 1. So it's one of the originals. Nowadays they're using all the Type 2s, and I think they're probably starting to move into a Type 3 soon. But basically my Type 1 has been going strong, and I actually chose ATEI's Pro Cut for my RMR. Their Pro Cut is basically, they're cutting the pocket for the red dot to the exact shape of the RMR. And if you didn't know, RMRs, they are all slightly different in size because they weren't really meant to fit in a pocket. Originally, Trijicon designed them to go on top of ACOGs, which didn't really have a pocket. They just had the screws holding them onto the plate, and they have the little bosses on the front. So basically, they never really thought to standardize the outside body of an RMR. Because of this, some RMRs will be slightly different in shape. So the Pro Cut is actually cut to a specific RMR that you send in. So I sent them this RMR with the slide to get all the work done. So they cut it to the exact size. And I think they bend the contacts a little bit to better contact the battery. So this thing has been running strong, and I haven't really had any of the dot flickering that the original Type 1 RMRs typically will, I guess, see. I haven't had any issues with mine, so it's been pretty good. Don't take my word for that though. If you buy one now, you probably should buy a Type 2. I think I just got lucky, but I've had thousands and thousands of rounds to this thing. I rack the gun off the red dot. I have no problems just utilizing that, and it's still going strong. So I'm happy with it, but I think I might've just gotten lucky. I didn't really do too much to the frame except for I swapped out the slide stop and the mag release. These are Tango down, slide stop, mag release, according to, I guess, how the Roland special recipe goes. I tried looking this up, and this is the closest I have come to getting a clone build of this gun without doing the framework, because I'm just not a huge fan of stippling stuff unless you absolutely need it. I think it's fine, but I've never really been a huge fan of that. I did have my trigger guard scalloped by Belandy Customs. He's out of Bellevue, Washington. He did a great job on that, and he actually measured basically where my knuckles go on the frame. So it actually fits my hand just right. Of course, it'll obviously fit other random people too, but he actually took that into consideration rather than just doing a standard cut. He actually looked at the way my hand fit onto the frame, and he cut it, and he cut the memory grip here for my support hand so that when I grip the gun, it actually slides right into that groove and it fits it just right. So I like that a lot. Feels great, looks great, did a fast turnaround time for me as well. And the last thing on here that is really the Roland special upgrade would be the Freya Magwell, which unfortunately has been discontinued for quite some time. This is one of my favorite Magwells just because it's super low profile. It has a very sexy look and it fits my hand really nicely. And basically, you know, feeding magazines into the gun, very simple, does what a Magwell should do. Unfortunately, like I said, they discontinued them. I would love to get more for more of my Glocks, but they're becoming harder and harder to get. After shooting this gun for a while and basically learning better shooting technique, I have actually changed the way I grip guns. And unfortunately, the slide serrations are actually working against me now with this gun. So I actually have a little bit of a scar on the top of my thumb here where the slide is actually cutting into my hand every time I shoot the gun because I'm getting a higher and tighter grip on the gun. So because of this, basically every time the slide recoils, especially with the ATEI serrations, because they're sharper and deeper, I'm basically just sawing into the skin of my thumb. And so with the new generation Glocks, the 4s and the 5s, they come with beaver tail back straps that you can add to the back of the gun that basically will kind of prevent slide cut from happening with Glocks, because since you have such a low bore axis, the slide really does come out and contact it. Try to show you right here. So like this, without this beaver tail pushing my hand a little bit down, then my hand will actually go right into the serrations. Not very comfortable, and I was kind of tired of basically rendering medical aid to my thumb every time I would go shooting. And sometimes, you know, you're shooting all day, 250, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 rounds, and basically my hand is just a bloody mess when we're done. Kind of tired of dealing with that, and I don't always shoot with gloves. Sometimes I do shoot with gloves, but sometimes you just got to raw dog it. And so because of that, I decided to run this beaver tail, and I actually run beaver tails on my Gen 5 guns as well. And it's actually helped me quite a bit with shooting and just not having to worry about cutting my hand open. I also got this weird colored tan one to go on this FDE frame. So now I've got that like scar multicolored tan situation going on. I think it's fine. I don't really care, honestly, but I think generally speaking, I think it looks great. And yeah, the Roland as a whole actually works really well. So, you know, you've got a red dot on top of the gun, which I would say if you're disciplined with it, helps with accuracy. And then running the comp and the weight of the light on the front of the gun, I believe helps me shoot a little bit faster, a little bit more accurately. These are very minor adjustments in terms of benefit, but as an overall package, I think it makes a lot of sense. So having the red dot, having the comp, having the light, having all the weight and everything just coming together, I think it works really well. And also shooting, you know, maybe HST 147 grain ammo plus P or hotter ammunition overall, NATO spec 9mm, it can make a big difference. A guy I know actually has a Roland build in 357 SIG instead of 9mm. So it's basically built off of a Glock 32. It's awesome because 357 SIG is going, I think, 1,400 feet per second. And typically, I think the grain weight for most of their ammo is at least 125 grain or more. So it's a fast moving round. With the compensator and the light and the red dot and everything, that gun shoots extremely flat because the comp is actually working with the gas expansion out the front. So it actually gives you an effective recoil control. So very cool option, especially for the bigger calibers. But yeah, I still love this gun a lot. It's a staple rotation, probably never going to go away for me. And it's a great pistol to pick up. And it's just, I have broken this gun in and shot so many rounds through it that it's very reliable, even with the comp. I know a lot of people have had to fine tune their Roland builds, especially when you put the compensator on there and you're trying to shoot maybe lower pressure ammo, like 115 grain, full metal jacket, like cheap stuff. That can basically jam up your gun if you're not running a lighter recoil spring to counteract what's going on with the comp mounted to the barrel. With the nitrided barrel being a little bit slicker than the stainless variant and running a little bit hotter ammo, I actually am able to run a standard, I think it's 15-pound factory recoil spring. I haven't had to do the modification where people will buy, you know, I think they go down to like 11-pound spring for their recoil spring. But, you know, changing all that stuff, you kind of have to play around with it, tune it a little bit, and that can cause some reliability issues. Whereas right now, this gun's fully tuned, ready to rock and roll, and I shoot the crap out of it. You can kind of see it's pretty beat. So yeah, that's, I just wanted to show you guys my old Roland special build. And yeah, I guess it's still a pretty relevant gun. Sometimes I'll take the comp and barrel out and I'll put a threaded barrel in there so I can put my Omega 9K on it, run a slightly different build. Or sometimes I'll take the comp and barrel out, put the factory barrel back in, take the light off, and I'll just carry it with no light and no comp and just the standard barrel in there. Still, you know, a good 19 with an RMR in it. So yeah, it's a nice and versatile setup. I like that, being able to play around with the different configurations. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more stuff, just let me know. And yeah, we post a lot of content on Instagram as well. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check us out in the link there. And yeah, let me know what you think. Do you have a Roland? Do you have any experience with one? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.